What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Welcome back to the Respawn, where I answer your questions. Today we're talking mercy buffs, Smurfs, fire heroes, and more. If you enjoy the video, make sure you like it and subscribe for more. First question, do you think Tracer is a sleeper pick? Tracer is one of the best characters in the game. She was incredibly dominant for a very long time, particularly in the dive meta. The reason why she isn't used now is because after Brig got released, Brig was a super hard counter to Tracer and just completely shut her down. Now that Brig's been nerfed, a lot of her damage is gone. Then, you know, with her combo specifically that was kind of countering the Tracer, Tracer could kind of come back a little bit, but even still, against Goat's comp, Tracer just isn't that good. She just doesn't have the potential needed in order to kind of overcome all of that sustain that Goat's comp has. Now, also with some of the new stuff that's coming out with the bunker comp, she also isn't all that good against that either, because they're all kind of grouped up, and there's a decent amount of kind of control in that area. You also have May a lot, or you might have, you know, just the Roadhog being able to hook the Tracer and that sort of stuff. So it makes it difficult for Tracer to function well in the current environments, even though she is one of the strongest characters in the game. Do you think a flame hero would be viable in Overwatch? Yes, because it's nothing more than just damage over time. Now, they could have some little extra special effects to it, make it linger or that sort of deal, but sure, I mean, it's just damage over time. It would definitely work. Would a hero with a supply drop ability work in Overwatch? I mean, I guess you could have an ultimate or something that has a supply drop kind of effect, but the question is, what would you put in it, right? Like, you could put a bunch of health packs that kind of spill out, or armor packs or something, like what we had with Torbjorn, or maybe you could just have, I don't know, some sort of little extra boost or something, sure, but I mean, really, when you think about it, all of that is just kind of visual. What you're ending up with is a spot on the ground that provides a certain benefit, and I mean, you could make it look however you want. Would Hammond be too overpowered as his adaptive shield could block stuns? Yes, that would be way too strong. You need to have some kind of a counter to him so he can't just go in and out as much as he wants, right? You have to be able to slow him down to stun him and all that kind of stuff, so you couldn't do that. It would just be way too strong. Who is the best healer to play in Platinum rank? I would say either Moira or Brigitte. Either one of them would work, but keep in mind, Moira is not good at the high ranks. Like, we're talking Master and GM, Moira is just not very good. And also, Brigitte is losing a lot of her viability now that Goats is going away. So as soon as it moves to a more standard 2-2-2 lineup, Brigitte is just not going to be all that good. In fact, her pick rate is now lower than Torb in Grandmaster. So I mean, you can use those to climb a little bit, but don't, you know, you got to be careful about kind of sticking to those kinds of characters. How would you solve Smurf issues? All right, so this is a really big one. It's also tough because how do you tell the difference between someone who's just playing really well for that match versus someone who is genuinely a very higher rank? Now, you can't just say, well, because it's a new account, then it's automatically a Smurf, because, I mean, there are people that are naturally good. Or you're going to have people that come over from a different game that are going to have very high skills, and they're going to be able to do really well, even on newer accounts. So that sort of thing is difficult. I think one of the things that they can do is kind of what they've already done with the top 500, where in order to have your character listed in the top 500, you have to have your account connected to your phone, and they already have all that mechanisms in place. So what they could do is they could simply extend it so that in order to even queue for competitive at all, you had to have your account connected to a phone number. Now, this is not going to completely get rid of it for certain because, you know, obviously there's going to be people who just use their friend's phone number or their parents or whatever, right? They're going to be able to use others. It's not going to stop it, but it certainly would slow it down at least a little. Will Overwatch 2 have the same lore? Yes. In fact, my guess is that Overwatch 2 is largely just going to be an extension of the Archives game modes where you have the 4-player co-op and you go through various story missions and stuff. I think Overwatch 2, or it's probably going to end up actually being an expansion as opposed to an actual sequel to the game. I think it's probably going to be an expansion, and it's probably just going to focus on kind of story-driven stuff and telling a lot of the different parts of the stuff that you don't get to see in the normal game, because story just doesn't really matter in the normal game. Do you think they will add a support that won't heal? No, I hope not. They tried that with Symmetra. It was just a complete and massive failure. It just didn't work. So in Overwatch, a character needs to provide one of 3 things. You either need to provide a lot of damage, you need to provide a lot of damage mitigation, or you need to provide healing. Now, you can have secondary things, like you can have a focus on damage and a second on kind of like the damage mitigation tanking, right? Like something like Zarya, right? Her main focus is damage, second focus is kind of a little bit of protection, whereas Reinhardt is the reverse. Main focus is protection, secondary is damage. And then you can have certain healers that have, you know, various things with utility and damage and healing and that sort of stuff. But one thing that just doesn't work in Overwatch is if a character's primary focus is utility, and that's effectively what you're talking about here, where you have a support character that doesn't heal. You're focusing on a character that has the most emphasis on utility, and that's what Symmetra used to be, and it just didn't work. Same thing with kind of some of the other characters that have since been changed a little bit. Like Mei was a lot like that, and they've given her a bunch of buffs and stuff, but the thing is, you just can't have the main focus be utility. So healers from now on are always going to heal, or at least they should. Blizzard said they wanted to buff Mercy's damage beam without buffing raw stats. Any ideas on how to do this? First thing that comes to my mind is to add a lingering effect to it. So if you have a damage boost on a teammate, what you could do is that after you move the beam off to someone else, or if you switch it to healing, what could happen is maybe you have like a 1 second of lingering damage boost. So, or, I mean, you know what, they could actually do this with the healing too, but specifically if we're talking about the damage boost, have it so that you damage boost someone, and then after you cancel it or after you shut it off or whatever, then they still get that extra damage boost for 1 extra second. So that would be a way to increase that damage boost without actually bumping up the numbers. Do you think a buff to Sombra's EMP that prevents enemies from reloading would work? Or would it be too overpowered? It would be way too strong. You can't shut them. I mean, EMP shuts down almost everything as it is. Making it so that people can't do that, no, that would just be way too strong. If a map is seen as unbalanced, how is it fixed? Well, there's a couple of different ways. So way back in the beta, Temple of Anubis had probably one of the worst second capture points ever. The left side was blocked off by a wall. You could get over it with certain characters, but most couldn't. The middle door was really narrow, and it was just a super pain. So what they did was they expanded the middle door, they made it a lot wider, and then they removed the wall on the left-hand side. Now, for another map like Rialto, they fixed that by simply speeding up the payload card, and they made it go a little bit faster, and that balanced it out. And then you have the Horizon Lunar Colony, where they had to do some serious reworking on that map. Like, they didn't completely, change everything, but there was some big changes made to it. So, how did they fix it? It depends on what type of map it is and how severe the problem is. With Horizon, they had to do a whole rework and, take the thing down. But with Rialto, they just sped up the card a little bit and it worked. So, it depends. What do you expect to be changed in the summer games? And do you expect every other event to be changed as well? So Jeff Kaplan talked about this a little bit. He said you can expect some changes. I think he's primarily talking about the date of the event. I think they're going to move it up and have it earlier in the summer rather than having it all the way towards the end near August. So that's the first thing. Are they going to change the event itself? I think there's a good chance there's going to be another event rather than just having Lucio Ball. I think there's a pretty good chance that they're going to have something new. I mean, with the workshop stuff, you can have all kinds of things like Hammond Racing and all that stuff. I mean, people are making that themselves, right? So I don't see why Blizzard couldn't make something like that where they, have a different game mode. So I think that's definitely a possibility. Are they going to change the other events? I mean, maybe a little bit. I don't know. It just kind of... I guess it depends on how much time they have, because creating entire new game modes involves a lot of effort. So it's not like they can just do it, because remember, if they spend a lot of time making these new game modes for just the event, then that's time they're taking away from adding bigger stuff to the game itself. So I would rather have the main game get those changes and get improvements as opposed to the events. But having said that, yes, the events are getting pretty stale, so they probably should change stuff up at least a little bit more. What is needed in the Overwatch roster? Well, they need to have more tanks. We're talking specifically tanks here, like characters that actually provide protection to your teammates, as opposed to just being high health DPS, right? So characters that have better damage mitigation abilities. We need more healers for certain. Definitely need more healers. But the funny thing is you also need more DPS. And I know some of you are going to be like, what? We got plenty of DPS. We just need more characters in general, because the way the game works and the way any kind of hero-based game or class-based game type works, the more characters you have, the easier it becomes to balance. And the less likely there are going to be certain characters that are just way too strong, or certain strategies that are too strong. Because what ends up, and I've talked about this in previous videos, so if you guys have been watching these Respawn videos, you've probably heard this before. But the thing is the more characters you have, the more combos you have, the more synergies you have, and then the less likely any one particular character or combo can be too powerful, because there's lots of different things that can counter it. That's going to be all the questions for this week. Thank you to everyone who submitted one. If you didn't get picked, you can try again next week. Reminder that I post the comment card with all the questions on Saturdays. It's on the community tab of my YouTube channel. And if you want to see all of the other questions that have been asked from previous videos, those are going to be in my Discord server. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.